we thank you anyways. Joining us right now to help professionalize the show a little bit more. On the phone because he's lazy, but we forgive him, from The Athletic, Sam Amick. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. Man, now you got to make me feel guilty. I was kind of being lazy. I'm in the lobby of a Denver hotel, trying to get a little coffee, trying to get rolling. Didn't have it in me to do the video.
Hey, let me ask you this. We talk about this with the players all the time, but for journalists,
is there a big game for you?
Is there an elevation issue for you too?
Well, as we transition to the old AirPods here, yeah, I would say so. My version of that, which is humbling, but it's okay, I'll air it out publicly, is not in the best shape right now. Yesterday tried to exercise a bit on the old elliptical, and needless to say, they did not have a little water tank in the gym, and I was essentially crawling to the front desk asking for bottles of water, and I think the elevation played a part. So, we all have our struggles.
The struggle is real. As we're talking with Sam Amick. So, Sam, your thoughts on this series? I mean, there's a lot of people pointing in Denver's direction, and understandably so. What kind of a chance do you give Miami in this series?
I give them a chance, and like a legitimate one, and I think that's the fun part of the series. Is it's on paper, it makes no sense. This should be one of those where we all say, "What do you think? 4 games, 5 games? What's it going to be?" But the magic of this Miami team is that nothing makes any sense. They're 6 weeks into a run that was not supposed to happen. I love the context of, you got the Dallas Mavericks waving the white flag to not even bother with the play-in tournament. And here come the Miami Heat to get to the finals, by way of that tourney. And, the fact that they keep doing it when it doesn't make sense means that I think you have to respect that against a Nuggets team where the idea of the Heat taking them down doesn't make any sense either. But I think, I do think we'll probably have some sort of series here.
Sam Amick with us. Sam, the narrative has almost become that Denver is just completely disrespected in many ways by the media. I have a theory, which is if you don't know something about something, you don't want to look dumb, you just talk about it less or you poo-poo it. But I don't know. Maybe it's all just smoke and we're trying to make Denver the victim, and they're not the case. You're a national media member. I know you know all about Denver. You're a true fan of the sport. But do you agree with the idea that Denver is, air quotes, one of the more disrespected one seeds that we've seen in a while in the finals?
I mean, it's one of those media discussions, Dave, that I have always enjoyed having. Yep. So, my answer to that would be that the part nobody ever says out loud is that it's like ESPN and Fox Sports on television disrespect the Nuggets. That, and a lot of people watch those platforms. If you talk about NBA media where, we've got 30 plus basketball writers covering the sport. And yes, I understand we get a lot of comments with good reason on our website about the fact that we don't have a beat writer for the Nuggets. We also don't have one for the Heat or, there's 10 teams total, or the Kings for what it's worth. But respect wise, I think people know who the Nuggets are. And I would quote Eric Spoelstra, who just yesterday, the Heat coach, said that, if Jamal Murray didn't get hurt and tear his ACL a couple of years ago, I think this Nuggets team that got to the West Finals in the bubble in 2020 would have probably continued to ascend. Their journey was different. They had to wait for Jamal to come back, for Michael Porter Jr. to come back. Jokic, more specifically, I do think has been disrespected, by most media, and that is certainly shifting now. That's probably where I would put the spotlight as opposed to the Nuggets on the whole.
Sam, sticking with Jokic here for a minute in Denver, what he has done so far in the postseason has just been incredible. If he were to have a final similar to what he's done already, where would that go in your mind? I know we all get recency bias, but just the historical context of his postseason run amongst other greats, where would that rank? I'm not old enough to have witnessed some of the best performances in person, but the research I've done, the context that I know,
it would be on the short list. You know, he already passed Wilt Chamberlain for the triple-double record in the playoffs and did it in the same amount of games. Wilt did it. Well, he passed it. He had 8 to Wilt 7, 15 games in. So that's one little marker. The 29, 13, and 10 averages in the playoffs have never been done for this long. There have been players who got bounced in the first or second round who had those kinds of numbers. Russell Westbrook among them, but never for this long. And then, you talk about the fact that if they finish the job, chances are his line in this finals is going to be pretty incredible. And he's got good numbers against the Heat in the past. He's 10-2, to give you an idea, against Bam Adebayo when they faced off. Although his line's not as thick as it has been recently. In those matchups, it's like 22, like 7 and 6, something like that. But that's a very long answer to your question, Jay. He's been incredible. It's been historic. Yesterday Michael Malone brought up the Tim Duncan comparison.
Yeah.
And I loved it because at that stage, when you have the quote unquote casuals of the fan base paying attention, the masses, you need to help people understand what they are watching. And I think the Tim Duncan comparison, it's not a great one. It's not perfect anyway, but it's a pretty good one. And I think it helps people kind of say, okay, that's how I'm going to appreciate this guy. He's not fireworks. He's not, pizzazz. He's not a ton of personality. He has some, but he doesn't love doing the media. But God dang, like Tim Duncan was one of the best of all time. And then Jokic is obviously already there as well.
Let's go through the gaze of history as we talk to Sam Amick, who is not old enough to have seen Wilt and Bill Russell and all those folks. So no disrespect to them, but let's put this in the perspective of the modern era. Sam, I have this theory that we are literally in the best time in history when it comes to watching basketball, in part for the following reason. We have arguably the greatest player to ever play the game in LeBron James, still playing and playing at a pretty high level right now. But we also have in two players that weirdly mirror each other, and roll with me on this now. Steph Curry and Nikola Jokic, I think, are very, very similar in the following way. Whereas LeBron is the GOAT, perhaps. Michael is the GOAT, perhaps. I don't know that there's a mold or a historical comparison for Steph Curry. He's smaller. He's not this huge muscular guy, and he has redefined his position. Let's go to Nikola Jokic, picked during a Taco Bell commercial in the second round. He looks like a guy that subs in at the YMCA. He does not look like an athlete. I don't think there's a historical mold for Nikola Jokic, who has in part resuscitated the center position and revitalized and broken the mold. Am I getting hyperbolic here, or do you see the road I'm going down?
I do. I think for the most part, where my mind goes is, I'm being repetitive, but the part where I would add in Tim Duncan quality-wise, character-wise, is that, LeBron mastered the art of recruiting guys to a certain spot and he's a hell of a leader in his own right, but he obviously did it at multiple spots. These guys who, to this point, Steph, Jokic, Duncan, Giannis, they plant their feet where they are, and their personalities are such, and their kind of selflessness is such that it opens doors for the head coach. Because Greg Popovich would always talk about how he would never be able to do what he did if Tim Duncan didn't let him coach him hard, and he did. And you hear the same stuff about the other guys that I mentioned, that the coach gets unlocked because the superstar is humble enough to take the coaching. And next thing you know, you get the best of Manu Ginobili and Draymond Green, and Chris Middleton and Jamal Murray, guys like that. And so, to me, that's kind of a through line with all those guys. And it's a team sport. We forget that sometimes because we market the individuals and fans gravitate to the superstars. But having this combination of transcendent talent, but also an understanding of what it takes to have the collective be as good as they can be is pretty special when you see it.
Sam, on the Miami side of things, obviously it's a big if they were able to pull off what would be deemed an upset here, like they've done basically every round and somehow come away with another with the title, legacy talk here. What does that do for a guy like Spoelstra, who's already got a couple, and then maybe Jimmy Butler? What does that do for his? It's been a really good career so far.
Yeah, both those guys get elevated. It's funny. I thought you were going more down the team road, Jay, and you almost had me wishing, I wrote, this would have been a fun story to write yesterday. Like, what if the Heat pulled this off?
Yeah.
Where do they stand in the lexicon of NBA history? The Knicks in '99, the lockout season, were the only other 8 seed to get to the finals. They didn't win. I don't know, and tell me if you guys have anything top of mind. Like, I think the Rockets, when they won it as a 6 seed, probably go down as, the kind of the biggest underdog of all time to win a championship. The Heat would maybe be on top of that list if they pulled this thing off.
Mm-hmm.
Now, more individually speaking, Spoelstra, and actually just had a really great conversation with the longtime Heat reporter Ethan Skolnick a few minutes ago here in the lobby about this. Like, Eric Spoelstra is a much better coach now than when he led those Heat teams to the titles some time ago. And what he's doing right now is like mad scientist stuff. And the stuff that you hear about the way his brain works and the way that he leads their group culture-wise is incredible. And he's already one of the best coaches of all time, but this would be kind of wizardry that would make him even more of a legend. Jimmy Butler would have his own incredible legacy, and kind of already does. Like, you talk about, and this is on brand for the Sacramento market. Part of the conversation I just shared or mentioned with the Heat reporter, I brought up DeMarcus Cousins, and you're probably wondering where I'm going with this.
Where are you going with this?
Yeah, hear me out.
Okay.
Thank you for the inner monologue.
Active listening.
Yeah, is that there is a razor's edge that comes with talented players, personality-wise. And DeMarcus was pretty tough on his teammates. And there were times when you wondered, okay, can he get away with it because he's so great that maybe he can lead these Kings teams to better, times and to collective success. That didn't happen. Jimmy Butler is a mother effer on a lot of his teammates.
Yep.
And we saw how he just emasculated the Minnesota Timberwolves back in the day, and had his kind of ill-fated exit from that situation. He butted heads with people in Chicago. He was in Philly, and it was a little prickly. And it's like, but here he is leading this group, and he excuse me, he's one of those razor's edge types of guys. Like, he is good enough that it's like it barely hits that sweet spot of like being a net positive. And the Heat, like some of these teams, or unlike some of these teams before, the Heat are so good at putting up with it that they make the most of it, if that makes sense. And if he gets his job done, it'll be, in terms of like individual credit for a title, I think he'll be on the short list as well. None of this stuff happens without Jimmy. They don't have a guy. I mean, he and Bam are the only guys on this roster that are all-star caliber. Kyle Lowry at this stage obviously is not. So I love the way Jimmy rolls, but it's not for everybody, and we'll see if they can do this.
Sam Amick joining us. And you talk about those narratives that I think are so fun. Jimmy Butler, and we know the story. His mother said, "I don't like to look at you. At 13, get out of the house." He was homeless. He came up as tough as possible. The guy again, Nikola Jokic, second round, all the things that go in there. The fact that he's not necessarily an accessible superstar. All the things that you're talking about, Sam, and yet basketball still has to be played. I think there are plenty of storylines here. Just your basic top line thoughts here. Is this in your opinion going to be as much of a cruise for Denver as a lot of people are saying it is? Do you think that's a fair way to cover it?
No, I don't. And again, it might be. Maybe I'll be wrong.
Sure.
One of the things that you got to acknowledge is that the Heat are going into game one with just 3 days rest, not even 3 days rest from game 7, and they've had a tougher slog than the Nuggets. The Nuggets earned 10 days of rest. But then you have that age-old debate about, and Jokic kind of joked about it yesterday. Like, we'll see if that helps the Nuggets. Maybe they're rusty. Rest versus rust has always been kind of tough to determine. That comes to mind. Tyler Herro is going to become a subplot in this series. Expect to see him in Game 3. Been out for some time with his injury, and I think the Heat have good plans for him when he comes back. So then it's like, all right, but are they going to be down 2-0? Denver has not lost at home in the playoffs, which is pretty incredible. That's, again, going back to Spoelstra, I just can't wait to see what he has in mind and what he's going to roll out schematically, because Michael Malone's a very good coach. Yes, I think it'll be a series. We'll see, but it makes no damn sense again, which is why I love this Miami team. I mean, guys, we should give a quick hat tip to the quasi local boy. I mean, you got a guy like Gabe Vincent coming out of Modesto and Stockton, whose NBA career was in the mud like 5 minutes ago. And now here he is, like an absolutely integral part of this team. Caleb Martin has got a pretty great story.
Yeah.
All these undrafted guys. That part's been fun to watch.
Sam Amick joining us live from Denver, Game 1 tonight of the final. Sam, bouncing around on a couple of things. There's been a lot going on in the NBA, and Bob Myers stepping down seemed to surprise the Warriors. At least that's what they let us believe. How surprised should they have been, and what do you think is next for Myers and the Warriors?
Yeah, I mean, half kiddingly would say that if they were surprised, they were not reading The Athletic, because I actually felt pretty proud of how we covered that story. We had a big piece in January telling you why. I mean, it was already out that his contract was in the last year of the deal, but more so explaining why he might head for the exit. And then, in the weeks leading up to it, Shams Charania had reported that the wind was blowing in that direction. That being said, you still did have people around the NBA, who didn't necessarily know. They weren't on the inside. They were not part of the Warriors, but like fellow GMs who cynically still believed that it was all one big leverage play and that Bob would be back with a massive contract. And that obviously didn't happen. They're sending Bob out in style, a lot of tributes, a press conference alongside the owner. I think I'm in the minority because I know they've gone to great lengths to say it was not about the money. And Bob himself has said that, to be fair. I'm in the camp of, like, I will always wonder what might have happened if Joe Lacob a year ago got ahead of this thing and said to Bob, like, with these 4 championships, with our organization's valuation having, my goodness, I don't even know how many X's it is, but it's from $450 million up to just an ungodly amount of money. Like, I'm going to make you our Greg Popovich or our R.C. Buford. Greg, Pop's a bad example because he coaches, but like, if you would have got ahead of it and given him a massive number last summer and kind of made his mind up for him, I think maybe that could have happened, but it's not how he played it. He kind of let it unfold. And I think during the course of the season, that inspired Bob to start thinking about his life and what direction he wanted to go. And I'm happy for him. We'll see what he does next. I've always enjoyed Bob. He's a classy dude, very good at his job. And, we'll see if the Warriors are going to be the Warriors with him not there.
Just skipping back and forth, Sam, I forgot to ask you this. With the Heat in these finals and a lot of talk about, and rightfully so, Eric Spoelstra and the culture there, has Pat Riley surpassed, or is he close to, in your opinion, the all-time heavyweight champion Jerry West when it comes to player executive, I should say? Is he on that level?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No question. There was a stat the other day that our David Aldridge put out, and I don't want to mess it up. I think Riley has now been a part of 25% of the finals in NBA history.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty good, not too shabby.
No.
You talk about the way that he's led from different spots, as the team president, as the coach. It's been fun to watch. There was a moment in the bubble that'll always stick with me where the Heat were on that run to the finals. Jimmy was doing crazy things, and Pat was not in the tier 1, meaning that, like, during games he would sit in the second deck because he was not actually in the bubble with his team. So Jimmy comes off the floor after one of the big playoff wins, looks up in the stands, and Pat is looking down on him like he's his bride or something, just in love. And he yells at him. Pat yells at Jimmy. He says, "You're making my dreams." And it was from the old yacht rock song, that "You're making my dreams come true," that would later become part of a Jimmy beer commercial. But like, it's just like storybook stuff where Pat Riley, like he did with LeBron, like he did back in the day with Magic and with all those guys, Pat found a way to connect with a complicated star player and to partner with him in the kind of way that paid off. And that's his genius. That's what he does. And, he's certainly on that list.
The team the Heat defeated, Sam, obviously Boston. They've got a big offseason. Your thoughts or chances that Jalen Brown and the Celtics agree to that massive extension, or is he going to even be on Boston next year?
I say this with a disclaimer that I've not made updated phone calls on that situation since they lost. So I'm just handicapping it. This is not like reporting by any means. It's just kind of reading the room. If I had to lean one way, like I do seriously wonder if they might break it up. And that could start with not offering the Supermax. I mean, everything that's coming out of Boston media-wise is that they will, and that they want to invest in Jalen. So, maybe I'll just be wildly wrong. But in terms of just the shelf life of a group, you're talking about a long stretch, 6-7 years now, where this group has been getting to the conference finals almost every single year, getting to the finals the one time, but not getting it over the hump. And in my experience, that comes with like a kind of a shared human toll where you just get a little, like if you don't get it over the top, you get a little stale and you get a little tired of one another. And even though the alternative might make even less sense, like how do you replace Jalen Brown? You really can't. I just wonder how they handle those dynamics. It was a challenging year for Boston. You go from the Ime Udoka controversy situation to Joe Mazzulla getting thrown in the fire, and everything that happened in the 6 months after that. I'm very curious to see it because I don't think Jalen in a perfect world wants to play in Boston for the long haul. I think if he does, it's because he got a lot of money waiting for him there. And to me, that's not the best kind of holistic way to continue your career.
That's Sam Amick of The Athletic. Go to theathletic.com, or better yet, download the app. Get yourself a subscription or two for the household. Give them away as gifts. Follow everybody and get the best coverage anywhere. Sam, appreciate you. We'll talk to you soon.
Briefly, gentlemen, Dave, nice job raising those kids. I saw your Facebook post about Avery and Mason.
Thank you.
That was very cool. And Jay, I hope Jackson's doing well.
Thank you.
It's very nice of you. And I believe we are going to, if we haven't already, by the way, seen you got a couple there too that are right around this age. So Sam, we are it's
coming.
We're officially old, my friend.
We are indeed. They were playing a Foo Fighters song at Landon, my 8th grader's promotion. That made me feel very old because that song's like 30 damn years old. So they're getting up there.
It's classic rock.
Yeah.
All right, boys.
Take care. See you,
Thanks,
buddy.
Sam.
That's Sam Amick. We are late for a break. When we come back, Dave